Well, welcome back to London on what is quite frankly a miserable day here in the capital. But now let's turn our attention to the US presidential election. Mitt Romney has managed to put himself back into the election after an abject display by Barack Obama in the first presidential debate. Now, on the 6th of November, Americans will go to the polls, but not just to vote for their president of choice, they'll also be voting for the House of Representatives and also the Senate, both of which are vital in sorting out the US fiscal problems. And I've been speaking to Professor Robert Singh about the race to the White House. There's obviously a lot of emphasis on the US presidential election, but there's also hugely important Senate and House of Representatives election. I just want to put one scenario to you. What if Barack Obama wins, but then he loses the Senate, which the Democrats hold currently, and also the House of Representatives? Won't that cause huge problems in trying to sort out the US's fiscal problems?
I think it will cause huge problems, yes, because what you're likely to get is a Republican Party that's even more conservative than it is currently, and a Democratic Party, conversely, that's moving on a more progressive direction. So there is a theory that they're both playing chicken and will have to give in sooner or later. But I think there's more reason to think that the incentives just aren't there to compromise, and especially if Obama wins narrowly, which, if he does win, it's likely to be a narrow victory, he can't really claim a mandate for any particular fiscal course. And so I think, you've got a potential for a recipe for serious gridlock from January next year.
Are there any signs that the Democrats may actually lose the Senate?
It's actually looking healthier for the Democrats than it was, because there was a lot of expectation. They've got 23 seats to defend compared to just 10 that the Republicans are defending. So there was a lot of expectation, say 6 months or so ago, that they would definitely lose. And now the money's kind of looking fairly even, that it could even be a 50-50 split. So they're in a healthier position than they were. But again, whether the Democrats win or the Republicans win, the majority is going to be so slim that no one's really going to have a serious control over the legislative agenda in the upper house there.
Yeah, let's talk about the presidential debates now. They're the events which make all the headlines. The first debate, Barack Obama seemingly had a huge advantage going in. Previously, Mitt Romney had been caught on camera saying those very bad things about almost half of the US population, but he didn't capitalise on that advantage. What was the problem there with Barack Obama? Do you think he was underprepared? Do you think he was just tired, or was he just being too nice?
I tend to think there's a combination of arrogance and complacency. I think that he thought, because he had a lead in the polls and the conventions didn't really benefit Romney, that this election was effectively sewn up and all he had to do was turn up. And clearly Romney invested heavily in that debate in terms of preparation. And I think it was just an unexpected commodity to Obama, who frankly isn't used to engaging at that kind of level. He's been in a bubble for so long now that I think he got a real shock.
He did turn things around in the second presidential debate. There was one really interesting moment when Mitt Romney tried to pick on Barack Obama and his pension, and he got a zinger back, as the US media would call it. Barack Obama quickly put him down.
Mr. President, have you looked at your pension? Have you looked at your pension?
I've got to say.
Mr. President, have you looked at your pension?
I don't look at my pension. It's not as big as yours, so it doesn't take as long.
Let me give you some.
But does that show a fundamental problem with Mitt Romney, in that he can't relate to the ordinary man? He can't criticise the president for those sorts of things.
There is a problem to a certain extent there, but on the other hand, I think he did well in the first debate, and to a lesser extent the second debate, in effectively selling the message that he's the one who can turn the economy around. And despite the fact that he is clearly in a bracket that very few other Americans are, there's a lot of still confidence in the success story that he represents. So you're right, I think that Obama is more perceived as being in touch with the ordinary American, but at this kind of time, at this economic juncture, Romney's still got a pretty powerful case to sell.
There's a lot written and said about these debates, but essentially, do you think they really sway those key voters? Because if you look at the swing states, the key states, Obama pretty much has the same lead as he did before the debates.
Yes, I think that's true, and I think historically debates haven't really done anything significant in terms of pushing voters in one direction or another. I think the first debate was an exception there, because the trajectory of the polls in most states clearly did shift there. And it may be that if Romney can hold his own, as has happened in previous elections, that those few voters that are still uncommitted may shift in his direction, and that could be really important for the outcome.
So what now for the presidential election? Does Mitt Romney have to go on the offensive to try and claw those key few states?
I think he's got to do a couple of things. I mean, one is to actually survive the foreign policy debate intact, and there's a big question mark there about his credentials. And then secondly, he's got to both get a serious ad buy in the key swing states, but also the get out the vote mechanism, where I think the Democrats have probably got a better operation than the Republicans currently. But he's got to push the economic message relentlessly, I think, still in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, what does Mitt Romney have to do in terms of foreign policy during that debate? Because he tried to go after Barack Obama of how he handled the killings in Syria, and it seemed to backfire on him pretty badly.
This crime. And the suggestion that anybody in my team would play politics or mislead when we've lost 4 of our own, Governor, is offensive.
Yes, I think he's got to rescue that position. He's got to look a potential commander-in-chief and to look presidential. But I think also he's got to walk a narrow line between the kind of very broad-brush criticisms that he makes of Obama's record in terms of an apology tour and leading from behind and so forth, on the one hand, and secondly actually establishing, well, what exactly would he do differently? Because most of the criticisms that he's made of Obama, whether it's on Iran or China, whatever, have not indicated that he would be doing something significantly different to what Obama's record has been. So I think he's going to have to walk that very narrow line very carefully if he's going to survive the Monday debate. For the first time for a Democrat in decades, actually has an advantage on national security questions. And I think if he can exploit that, illustrate Romney's weakness in terms of foreign affairs, then that could help him embellish his credentials to get a second term.